Well, South African billionaire Christo Wiese is better known for his investments in retailer Pepkor and private equity group giant Brait, but a key part of his portfolio is niche industrial group Invicta. Then company's editor Garth Tennyson went behind the scenes to understand what makes Invicta tick and what gets a management excited. Garth joins us on the desk together with Anton Solomons, research analyst at Tebe Stockbroking. Welcome to you, gentlemen. Garth, I'll obviously start off with you because, of course, you wrote the story. It's a company that has really tended to fly under the radar, but I suppose what pricked my ears up, and I'm sure that's really what got you going, is the fact that Christo Wiese is behind this company, of course, being the chairman. So why did you decide to write the story? Well,
it's really the fourth leg in his sort of billion-dollar empire, if you like. And the interesting thing about it is that they've thus far been pretty much restricted to South Africa. And when I spoke to the CEO, Arnold Goldstone, he said to me that if I had spoken to him a couple of years ago, they actually would have said that they had no desire to expand beyond South Africa's borders. But obviously they're looking for a way to diversify away from the geographic and, I guess, political risk of being concentrated in one economy. And they're looking to raise quite a lot of capital and make a big push into the emerging market world.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Johan, one of the interesting things about this is the fact that they talk about the emerging market space, but it's not really the fact that there's a lack of opportunities out there. It's the fact that there are a lack of opportunities or the right opportunities, and it's not the issue around finance. They really are well supported. That's what they're saying.
Yeah, I agree with you. The opportunities locally are quite limited. Internationally, there are a broader mix of emerging markets with different characteristics in their jurisdictions, and they also look for brands. Brands are particularly key in this space because you've got a small or a thin corporate layer with so many different brands that you distribute to so many different sectors. I mean, if you look at the top line, it's spread across all the industries locally. Dominated by the mining sector, obviously, but you can see an industrial flavor in its mix. So yes, there are opportunities offshore, and the group will pursue that aggressively.
I mean, they're saying that it's going to be a big offshore acquisition and smaller acquisitions, bolt-on acquisitions here. Yeah, well,
they're raising quite a lot of capital. The figure is tentatively 2.3 billion, and roughly 1.3 billion of that will be debt. And then between 600 million and 1 billion in perpetual preference shares that will be issued. When I did speak to the CEO, he did caution that perhaps they'd stick to the 600 million instead of the 1 billion, depending on appetite and depending on what their needs are. But definitely one big offshore acquisition coming. And then a few smaller ones locally. I know that they've got a 60% stake in Tile Torio, which distributes obviously ceramic tiles and taps, sanitary ware, that sort of thing. And I think its revenue is around 300 million. They're about to pay 45 million for another business that'll push that revenue.
And they're not telling which business that is.
No,
top secret right now.
As all good CEOs know, they wouldn't disclose that.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely a very interesting story. Going forward.
I suppose the title of this story, it's about Christo Wiese, and where he's put his money so far has been very successful. One would think, this is the right bet if you're looking to put your money in, I suppose, a smaller cap stock.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of looking at the story. I mean, it's 10 years ago, this thing was trading at $3.10. I think it's now trading somewhere around about $80 a share. I mean, that's phenomenal. There are not a hell of a lot of listed investments that have done that kind of return and maintained a good dividend through the whole process. Also, we're not very good at making good industrial companies. I mean, I think yes, you have the Imperials and the Barlows and that kind of thing, but we battle to build good, decent-sized industrial companies, and I think for me that's really one of the exciting things. And I think also if you take a step sideways and you look at what Christo Wiese has done with something like Brait, they've kind of built it around the whole Pepkor stake, but they've also gone and they've got the exposure to Iceland Foods, which was like a really niche European investment, and I think that kind of gives investors quite a lot of confidence, and that they're going to be able to take this business into, they'll find a good acquisition there.
Yeah. Well, what about the agricultural exposure? I mean,
Yeah.
do you worry about that? Because that does create volatility in the share price, Anton.
Yes, definitely. You know, if the corn or if the maize price drops, or if the rand strengthens, the maize price could also drop because there's a surplus being harvested.
And less demand for tractors.
And then consequently less profits for farmers, and so they can't refresh their equipment. But the prices are set internationally. They also, you know, the rand is quite volatile, so they would import these capital equipment and distribute them in the region. So for them, you know, there is a refresh cycle happening. There is a catalyst in that a lot of the requirements for the new trucks are for them to meet certain European standards, and most of the truck park in South Africa doesn't meet that new requirement or new standards. So there is a refresh cycle on the go, and they participate quite successfully in that. So there are some risks, and it's you know, they've got quite a good offering in the mid-market space, and technological advancement helps them because you get a better truck. Maybe you don't need a driver anymore. Maybe it's satellite driven. So then you can, the farmer itself can make a better margin on investing in a new piece of equipment.
Yeah, Sam, I mean, I don't know if I can jump in here, and I mean, Garth, I think will have more anecdotal evidence, but just reading the story, I mean, one of the things that really came through for me was management seemed to be quite a, you know, good old boys. It was a humble type of environment. I think you often get caught up in quite flashy offices, and one of the things that seemed to come through quite clearly was there's a humble management. They do the basics right, and I think, you know, when you're looking for good investments, you want managers that believe in what they're doing. They have an ownership stake, and I think also just quite a flat, you know, not I mean, Arnold Goldson says there's no flashy offices. If he's the first guy at the office, he'll be the guy that opens up, and I think that, you know, that goes a long way in the current climate.
Yeah, just looking and reading the article, you were very impressed, it seems, by his character. I mean, you spent 3 paragraphs just talking about the man behind the scenes. So, of course, it seems that, you know, of course, this is always very important, looking at the management team and judging the type of future that they might have under their guidance.
I was very impressed. A hell of a clever guy, mechanical engineer by trade. He was telling me how he basically did a BCom accounts in 1 year. You know, everything was compressed back in the day, if you were clever enough to get into that stream. But the other reason I spent time talking about him is because he was just so open and honest and just sort of put his cards out on the table with me, and which is quite different because often you speak to a CEO and the first thing they'll say to you is, you can write about my business, but I don't want you writing about me or my personal life. And he was just remarkably open and remarkably frank, so it did make for a very nice opportunity to delve into the person behind the business or behind the title CEO.